Hello, everyone. So, if you're watching this, I'm not in the classroom. I'm going to walk through with you what I would have done with you live in class. There are a couple of slides that we need to review, as well as some agenda items. I'm going to walk you through what you need to do in a basic sense for the lab, as well as making sure that before the end of this video, you've completed homework 1.8 with me. So, let's not slow down at all. Uh, As we're looking here, you can see that for cohort A, no matter what period you are, this is the agenda for cohort A. We've hopefully have accomplished as a team the assignment, which is going to be completing 1.8. But if you didn't, like I said, I'm going to give you time to do 1.8 on slide 9. Hopefully you've started to try to watch the video that's embedded on slide 10. If not, I'll discuss that further and also begin to look at the lab report. But if you've had trouble finding where the lab report is, I will be able to give you more information on where to find that soon. And we're going to do that all on Wednesday. Okay. So just to finish out what the agenda is going to look like, you're going to have the rest of this class period after I'm done with this video to work on the lab. Thursday, keep working on the lab. Friday, keep working on the lab. Okay. Chances are I may, because I'm out, push this due date to Monday. But what I need everybody to do is to pay attention to the Google Classroom stream, just to keep updated on if I'm going to be changing that deadline. So as of right now, I'm thinking about changing it, but try to complete as much as you can, and if not all of it, by Friday. Okay. I'm also going to apologize if my son starts crying in the background. It's been a little rough tonight, amongst many other things that have been rough. So that's part of the reason why I'm not going to be at school tomorrow. So let's dive. You're still going to get the real me. So let's dive into the work guide. So on slide 10, this checkpoint here at the bottom of slide 10 is going to be your checkpoint, which is homework code 1.8. So pulling that up, you're going to see that you're going to be completing the graphing practice checkpoint and fill in the regular top stuff, depending on what period you are, 1A, 3A, 4A, 5A, 7A, 8A, depending on what you are when you're watching this. I'm only going to ask you to answer one question, which is how do graphs help us interpret large sets of data? And at this point, with your knowledge of graphs and also starting this topic this year to refresh your memory with graphs, I really would like an actual answer here instead of simply putting I don't know. I actually need something here in order to give you some completion credit. The self-assessment down here, I think, is going to be extra critical for this particular time in our topic because you're going to get to assess yourself before the lab, and you're also going to get to assess yourself after lab. And what's going to be important to me is to see whether or not your self-assessments have increased or decreased after the lab, and that will help me inform instruction for the following week. Okay. Also, I want to point out that next week I'm also thinking about having a makeup day or two in order for some people to get caught up with assignments. For those that are fully caught up with assignments, don't worry, I have something fun for you to do, or at least I'm planning something fun to do for you that would be worth a bonus, to which everybody else can do as well, as long as they're caught up with all the work. Okay, so let's switch back into the work guide, and we're going to go to technically. Oh, you know what? A little bit of a mistake. I made a new slide here. So technically what we're looking at is slide 9, but tomorrow will be slide 10. Okay. The video you're watching is on slide 9. So let's go to now what is technically, slide 10, but now slide 11 on here. Okay. So in this video, this walkthrough, I'm going to be taking care of a tremendous amount of pointers and tips and some basic walkthrough stuff that will get you through this whole lab. As you can see, I'm standing in front of an aspect of the access point, which I'll discuss later, but I go into like very detailed information to help you get through this lab. So please make sure you watch this. It's 6.5 minutes long, so it's not too much of a pill to take. It's not too difficult to take, I guess. So up to here on what is now slide 12, which was the former slide 11, you have your link to the notes if you need to look at them. The lab starts on page 5 if you want to see a blank version or you need a clear copy to look at. If you need to use a Chinese version, it's here. It's also on page 5 of this document if you need to start looking at translations. Next, we have the access point here. So for now, I'm going to click it and I'm going to open it up in a tab, but I would like to go back to my work guide for now so that I can show you also, depending on what period class that you're in, you are going to be clicking the link that is here. For all intents and purposes right now, I'm going to open up the period 1 classwork, and it brings me to the classwork section, not the actual assignment, but the classwork section. So you're going to need to scroll down to where you see homework 1.9, which is the Graphing Sunspot Lab. When you click that, it's going to uncover your instructions. Okay, so I'm going to read this and follow along with me. So fill in the attached document with definitions and answers for the Graphing Sunspot Lab. You do not need to type any of the questions. So you're only filling into the document definitions and answers for the Graphing Sunspots Lab. Make sure, however, that when you're typing it in, that you're not plagiarizing. Now, all of you are going to be given a function called originality that you can click and check to see how much of it is plagiarized. That is your choice. However, on my end, the calculation and check occurs automatically. So even if you don't choose to check beforehand. Now, papers that do reach 10% or higher in plagiarism will not count and must be rewritten for credit. Just a little tip that where students tend to get caught is when they are doing their definitions. More often than not, those are the ones that get copied and pasted. So I need you all to try your best and put it in your own words. If you need it, there are access points on slide. This is going to be slide 12 now because I've bumped everything slightly. See how we're on 12 now, that's the access points. I'm not going to leave this slide in here forever. Okay, so the video walkthrough is on slide 11 at the moment, but it will eventually go back to slide 10. I've also given you the link to the video here so that it's easier for viewing purposes. Okay. In case you want to open it up on your phone and have it launch into an app rather than into another tab on your Chromebook. The work guide link is here in case you want to launch from here, and I've also given you a link to the video here as well. So what we really need to look at is the Graphing Lab 2020 report page. This is where you're going to be putting your answers from the lab itself. I do need a heading up here in case I ever need to print out labs in the future, because sometimes I have to give you feedback that includes me drawing either diagrams or sometimes needing to give you more direct information. So a name is going to be really important so I can make sure that I can organize documents if I were to print them. The title of this lab is Graphing Sunspots. Okay, now I'll talk a little bit more about what sunspots are when we get to the access point. So here we have a list of vocabulary words, and you have spaces over here that you can use to put your definitions in. Notice that I'm leaving a fair amount of space for you to be able to put decent definitions in your own words. And after definitions, you can move into discussion questions that will be based on the graph that is in the access point. There are 9 questions you have to do. Number 10, you can skip. There are spaces next to those 9 questions that you can fill out information in. And then finally, after finishing discussion questions, you will have a conclusion with an explanation that will go with that. Now, as you can see, there is a pretty good portion of space that can be filled in for definitions. Just keep in mind that there are going to be quite a few words that populate your definitions as a total, and that's going to be important in considering the percentage of plagiarism. Okay, so now let's go to the place where we can find the questions in which you will have answers for this document. In the access points, you can see again, title is Graphing Sunspots. So what are sunspots? So briefly, they are small little circles or oblong looking shapes that are of cooler material on the Earth's or on the sun's surface. Okay? And we like to count these sunspots over periods of time so that we can predict the sun's weather. And later this year, we'll talk a little more about how the sun's weather can impact many different things on the planet. All right, so if we take a look here, you can see all the vocabulary that I was using in that last page. Also, I'm patting myself on the back because you don't have to do the procedure. All right, so I have taken everything that's in this chart here and I have plotted it onto this graph. And as you can see, the dots are fairly large, so they're easy to spot. And they are all connected with a line. Now, on any graph, we have two axes, and those axes have to be titled. So on the y-axis, the average annual sunspots number is going to be here. And the range on that scale, or on that axis, is the 0 to 200. And each box is going to be worth 4 in terms of sunspots. The x-axis is time in years. And as you can see, it goes from 1950 to 2000. So there are 50 years of data. Now, what's important is that you also pay attention that there are patterns and relationships to this graph. And if you're having trouble remembering what those relationships are, either go back in your notes or check the first video in the graphing topic to help you with that. If you are ever required to figure out exactly what the value is for one of these dots, I would say if you're having trouble seeing what it's worth, find the dot, figure out what year it is. So for instance, this dot that I'm looking at right now is in 1962. So if I'm curious how many sunspots were there in 1962, I'm going to come up here, look at 1962, and I'm going to see that it says 38. So there is a way to get an exact value, even if it's on this graph and it might be a little difficult to see. Okay, so we're going to use that graph in order to answer some discussion questions. And those discussion questions are here. Now, some of the questions have specific information that is related directly to the question, and some of them are asking you to refer to a reference page that I've created after this one. So like number 3, it says see next page for an explanation about maxima and minima. Number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are all dependent on you being able to understand and to utilize the concepts on the 3rd page. So I'm going to scroll down to the 3rd page and I'm going to elaborate briefly on it because my video goes into far more detail for you to watch that and to follow through with that. So on the 3rd page here where it says average time span for maxima, I am going to go through an example graph, and I'm also going to show you how to eventually calculate the average time span for maxima. And the same process can be used for minima and for sunspot cycles. So if you take a look, these red dots that are at the top are the maximas. These blue X's on the bottom are minimas. There are slanted lines with a horizontal line connecting the middle of them. That is going to be a dimension line, and that dimension line is measuring from this maxima to this maxima, and between it we're going to call it a time span because it spans over this x-axis of years. We can also do that eventually where we can have a span from minima to minima. Now this particular formula, it's not algebra, it's not geometry, it's not calculus, okay? It's not real analysis. You're wondering what I'm talking about with that. That's okay. So not a big deal. Unless you want to be a mathematician. You can ask Mr. Willie about real analysis. So time span 1, you've got some years. Time span 2, you've got some years. Time span 3, you got some years. Plug and chug. Don't forget to do the units. Okay, here's an example. 5, 6, 22, 5,544,602. None of those numbers mean anything because I'm not telling you what I'm referring to. And what I'm referring to are units. You need to have units there. So if I don't say anything after a number, it doesn't mean anything. It's just a number. Okay? So we need to be able to have a unit in order to give it significance. And when dealing with time span, you got to make sure that you put the unit years. Down here, I'm just asking you to do the same setup. However, you are focusing on just using the minimas in order to create your time spans. I also talk about what is one sunspot cycle as well, so that you can do the calculation for those too. All right, so let's go back to the work guide. Now, if you actually get through all of this week, okay, because I'm expecting you to continue working on this through the week, at least until we meet again in Zoom. Like I said, it's a soft deadline of Friday. I'm thinking I might postpone that to Monday, and I will be making a Google Classroom stream announcement for cohort A if I do that. But there is this final checkpoint for graphing before we move on. And if you would like to, don't answer it now because it's not genuine. It's not going to help me help you, right? I mean, that's the most cliche thing we ever hear is like, help me help you. But it really does. Because if you do the checkpoint today, which is 1.8 on this slide here, and then a few days later after you finish going through the lab, and you give me some feedback on this checkpoint, I will have a better idea of whether or not I need to spend more time on graphing. So with that said, I think that's a pretty good overview of what I would have told you if I was live in person. I know I'm not able to take direct questions, but feel free to, if you're in first period, you can talk to Ms. H. If you're in fourth period, you can talk to Ms. Kowalski. And if you're in eighth period, you can talk to Ms. Kowalski. If you're having some serious trouble with the lab, feel free to Jupiter me. I will try my best considering what I'm dealing with right now at home, and I will try to get back to you. Other than that, that's all I've got. I'm glad you were able to spend some time with me, and I hope this actually works out in some way. Okay? I miss all of you. I'll see you soon. Bye.